Hello, and welcome to the Market Bull podcast. Please note, topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial or investment advice. Today on the show, I was joined by Aaron Revelle, the Chief Operating Officer at Trilogy Minerals, which is listed on the Australian Stock Exchange under code PUR. Aaron is a senior mining executive with over 15 years of experience in the development and founding of natural resource companies. Aaron discussed his history and why he's always been attracted to the lithium sector. He talked about the lithium triangle in South America and what it meant for Trilogy Minerals to have access to a salar within Argentina. Aaron also talked about the Rio Grande Sur Lithium Project and the timelines for the area that the company has. He also mentioned the plans for the pilot production plant and how that ties in with the company's overall objectives. Aaron highlighted how the area is ripe for consolidation, with large mining and car manufacturers looking at acquiring assets to guarantee their lithium supply. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode. So hello and welcome to the Market Bull podcast. I'm your host, Ben Kostrich, and joining me in Perth, he's flown over, he won't be here for long naturally, but is Aaron Revelle, the Chief Operating Officer at Trilogy Minerals. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
It's your first appearance on the show. I've been liaising with you via email for a couple of weeks now, and I always prefer the face-to-face discussions to naturally get a gauge of who the person is and what they're doing. But before we dive into Trilogy Minerals, and we should say it's an exploration company, and one of the big projects is in Argentina in particular, lithium, and got a whole host of other projects happening. But what's your history and what's the story, and how have you got yourself into this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked in the mining and metal space for the better part of 10, 15 years now. I actually started my career at a company called Admiralty Resources, which held the Rincon Lithium Project back in 2008. Going through that project and looking at the market then to now is apples and bowling
different.
Balls. Yeah. You've got a very progressive market geared towards critical metals and electric vehicles and electrification, the green revolution. However, through that period, I've worked on various mining projects in a few commodities, actually. I've worked in iron ore, I've worked in a few other spaces as well, but I've always been brought back to lithium. So I set up a company in 2015 in lithium, which was kind of the re-emergence of the lithium space. And we saw a few public companies such as LPI. That was when they went public, 2016, 2015. The emergence of Tesla, really, that was probably their first period. And then moved on again in 2018 to another lithium company, all in Argentina. That company did quite well, actually. It eventually became what was known as Arena Minerals, that was purchased by Lithium Americas for 340 million Australian dollars, and that was only last year as well. So in doing that led me to look at what other lithium projects were out there in the market, and that was what led to the formation of Trilogy Minerals, which ultimately is now Pursuit. So I've always worked in the lithium space, more of a focus. I have an MBA. My background is capital markets, investment banking, but more project development, project management, and project delivery. I like to look at the projects, not so much from a geological aspect, but really, is this something that can move the needle? Is it something that can grow? Can it get into production? I'm not a geologist. I'm not a mining engineer. I'm a guy that likes to, as I said, move the needle, push the project forward towards production, really look at the developer status. So having worked in iron ore, had a look in copper, had a look around at a few various commodities, but as I said, for my sins or for whatever reason, always have come back to lithium.
Drawn back there.
Yeah, and just started my career there. So it's been a fun ride looking at the various evolutions of the cycle, and to think where we are now is quite amazing.
And I mean, naturally, have you seen parallels between all those different commodities and the way that you've approached those projects over time? Or have you always just been drawn to lithium almost from its uniqueness? Or what's always been the draw card for you to go back to lithium?
I think lithium's a very highly specialized industry, and there are not many guys on the planet that actually understand the commodity in a very comprehensive way. Yeah. Lithium for many years was dominated by Greenbushes, Rockwood Lithium, FMC as was, and these were not major companies, but they were major in a space that was relatively not so understood, probably, I would say, until 2015, 2016. You started getting people go, oh, there's a difference between hard rock and brine lithium. So it's a very specialized area, and it requires, just in my view, a very diverse skill set base across a number of people to actually stand up the projects. I have an interest more in the project execution. People talk to me about mining projects, and I'll always talk about environmental permits, construction permits.
Yeah.
What's the financing that needs to be raised, that needs to be executed for project delivery? Whereas you also need competent geologists. You need mining engineers and metallurgists, or in our case with lithium brine, chemical engineering guys who can all sort of say the same thing. And I always go back to one of a very old saying that I once heard was, if you've got a mine and there's a mining engineer, a geologist, and a metallurgist all saying roughly the same thing, you could be on to a winner. And that's kind of where lithium sits in this space. It's a unique area, but it's also exciting. Tesla's just come out of nowhere. I mean, when I started my career in lithium, the electric car of the time was Vincent Bolloré's blue car, which was this French billionaire had an electric car. I think it only went about 50 kilometers on a single charge. And it looked like the Mr. Bean blue car with three wheels, an electric
horrendous
battery in
looking
it.
thing.
And it's like, no one's going to buy this. And now you've got, Tesla, you've got the Roadster coming out that's got a 3-year waiting list that people happily go and drop massive deposits on the hope it'll be built. And obviously there's a mass adoption now of EV. So it's an exciting space to be in, really, and to be a part of that journey.
Well, yeah, the adoption of EVs, and it's almost just everywhere. You can't get around the fact that is where we're all going, and everyone wants it. It's the new shiny toy, but it's almost come out of nowhere, especially in the last handful of years. I always look back to 2020. Lithium had its rise in 2016, and then it dipped, and then all of a sudden, like a snap of a finger, everyone wanted an EV, and it was predominantly pioneered through Tesla. But now you just see every other car manufacturer, it's always doing it. And I mean, everyone looks to Tesla as the staple of the technology and what they're achieving, but it's all been driven through lithium and other metal commodities. But I mean, looking at Pursuit Minerals, the main project, or one of the projects that we're talking about is the one in Argentina. And there's a bit of, well, I guess, what is the outlook in Argentina? Like, what's the history of that whole, I researched last night, the lithium triangle and the almost attraction for that area.
Yeah, I think it's also, the attraction of Argentina, I would say, actually goes back to the 80s when, FMC, which is Livent now, they were originally a hard rock producer, and they transitioned into Argentina looking at the economic viability of their project. The Phoenix mine, that's a 1986, 1987 start on that project. So, Argentina sits within a unique area, which is that lithium triangle, which is majority of the world's brine projects. There are some, other brines, obviously, in the States and in China, but the concentrated commercialized brines all really sit in that area. The largest in the world is that Salar de Uyuni salt flat in Bolivia. It's had its challenges, obviously, through the government regulations there and also the government regimes. Then you have Chile, which I'm a personal believer that Chile will go through nationalization. I think we've seen this before, and if you go back in your history books and look at 1971, constitutional change, which is what Govic's got going on now, 1977, all of the US copper companies were nationalized. And whilst there is a more market-friendly presence in their commentary, I think that history tends to repeat itself in Southern American jurisdictions, and I think that that's where Chile is really heading. It also talks to if you look at their country and the economy, copper represents 15% of their GDP, whereas the lithium is about 1%. The Chileans are a very proud people, and I think that Chile will probably likely go further in their nationalization steps, and that's being led on. Then you've got Argentina, which has been a relatively stable jurisdiction. Today, the federal mining minister said, there's no nationalization on our horizon. The mining law, whilst being a federal code, is regulated and governed by the states, and there's no room in our constitution for nationalization. So they've ruled that out. Argentina is a very interesting place, as whilst you have a singular country and their love of football and steak and fine wine, the provinces vary quite significantly in terms of their culture and how they tend to operate. So from that perspective, it's a very thriving place. It's not without its challenges, obviously.
Naturally.
It has IMF bailouts and all the rest, but the country is open for business. They are actively courting foreign direct investment. They've got issues with inflation, interest rates. Inflation is 100%, interest rates 97%. If you look at the country in terms of COVID, they were the second longest lockdowns in the world in Buenos Aires after Melbourne in Australia. But they didn't have anywhere near the level of government support and fiscal stimulus that we enjoyed here in Australia. So you've got an economy that is trying to recover and boost business. There's an election being held later in the year where the large expectation is that the political regime will shift back to what is Macri's party. This is a pro-business party where a lot of the currency controls were, when they took power, 2015, 2016, a lot of those controls were ripped out within days of them winning the election. So, it's the boys from the football club. Macri ran Boca Juniors, and they are very pro-business, open for business. And Argentina sits within a fascinating landscape where you do have about 12 salars up in the Puna region. Some of them are more commercialized and historically probably a bit more significant, such as Hombre Muerto. That was the first real operation in Argentina. But having said that, there's now new projects that are coming online, and we've seen that with Olaroz, which is in the Jujuy province, but that was what was Orocobre, now Alchem, which is now merging with Levant, and there's been an influx of business over the last decade as lithium starts getting on people's radar. But even so, Argentina is also home to a few other commodities like copper, like nickel. They're really pro-mining, pro-business. The Vaca Muerta shale gas deposit is obviously something that's on a lot of people's radars as well. So, Argentina, in terms of that lithium triangle, is probably the most attractive for foreign investment. In terms of Bolivia and Chile, I think they've got caution signs written all over them. But Argentina, despite its challenges, and every country has its challenges, Brazil
naturally
has its challenges, Chile have their challenges, but Argentina is definitely open for business.
Well, I mean, it's incredible to hear, because I know even my brief reading of Argentina, there are so many other big players in the area or even looking to get in. And I think given the trend that the world is going towards, it's almost, you could say, a high probability that it's going to be required. And the fact that, there's always turmoil when political things happen and change. And it's almost a guarantee that, your point before, that the new party came in and ripped up, they always want to change straight away. And it wouldn't be surprising that, when the new ones come back in, their instant sort of priority will be getting back business, making it attractive for foreign investors and to get these productions and mines and just exports up and about, because there is just so much demand. But I mean, diving into your project and now that your role, you've got the Rio Grande Salar. I'm terrible with my pronunciations, unfortunately, but I mean, what's attractive about that project in particular, and what excites you? Because I saw you've got your roadmap for 2023 of what you're looking to accomplish, but I mean, breaking that down, what was the lure, what was the attraction with that particular asset?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started the project with Trilogy, we looked and had a look around and said, look, we've done several projects now in Argentina. We did a project on the Pastos Grandes Salar, which was the last one I did before this, and obviously that got taken out. And sitting with my group and Tom Eady and the seed investors we had, we were like, okay, this is our third project, hence why it was called Trilogy. And we turned around and said, we're going to do this different. The project on Pastos, when we looked at that, it had no exploration work. So it had neurology, which was a couple of companies on the TSX that had done really well, but there wasn't geological sampling, there wasn't drill core data, there wasn't any geophysical work. When we looked at Rio Grande is probably one of the most explored salars, by surface, square kilometer, hectare, however we want to put it, in the sense that there is significant amounts of drilling, significant amounts of geophysical survey. In fact, the whole salar has been subject to a CSAMT survey, so you can look at the entire salar under the CSAMT.
What's a CSMAT? Sorry, it's
CSAMT,
another
That's essentially it's a seismic survey, which gives you a look at the resistivity values of underneath the salar. So when you're looking at that data, you can actually track where there's likely aquifers, likely lithium brine, and all the rest. So for us, we were able to peg some really good ground on the Rio Grande Salar. The Salar itself has an NI 43-101 resource of 2.1 million tons lithium carbonate equivalent. The average grade is about 380 to 400 mgli. So that was a big draw card for us, was the advanced level of exploration. We weren't going in greenfield where you're wondering, going, oh, do you actually have lithium?
Yeah.
No, we have lithium. We know there's lithium underneath these tenements. It comes down to a question of how much is there, which was a key component. But also with lithium, it's what we're seeing now in this wave. You had this wave of activity, of pegging exploration and all the rest that sort of cooled off. And now it's really a focus on the emerging producers. And that's what we brought to it. We brought a block flow diagram and some engineering work, historical engineering work that had been done, where you can look at that and say, okay, that brine can be converted and turned into lithium carbonate being the end product. So when you merge those together, we had about a 10,000 or 9,000 hectare position on the Salar. And then we had the roadmap of building out a plant that would actually produce the end product. Because at the end of the day, lithium is a supply demand. It's that perfect scenario. There's not enough supply and demand is ramping up. So we wanted to have a project that could meet the demand response, which we felt we did in Rio Grande Sur. It was a decent project. It had the grades that were needed. Very similar brine composition to Pastos Grandes, which we were comfortable with. So with the historical work, we pegged that and then went on to raise the capital to acquire that, which was Trilogy, and then the Pursuit deal as well.
Okay, and now, that's so much going on there, and there's a lot to digest. But now that in your role, there's all these terms and titles that are thrown around it, and you were saying one of the prime roles of yours is project execution. So when you're looking at that, describing in a simple sense your day-to-day job or your long-term projects and objectives, what are your priorities now that you've got this project and there's sort of stages to get through? And you mentioned before, I'm sure there's a whole host of legal and compliance work. Give us a round-out picture of what is all encompassing in transitioning this now to a project which clearly you sound like you've got a fair bit of experience and proven record in doing, but what's now all involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. The day-to-day is really advancing this project as a developer towards production. That's the ultimate goal. So where we are now, we've just announced that we have an option to acquire a lithium carbonate pilot plant. That work stream added to our exploration work stream, which is our drilling, where we're looking to have an initial JORC resource, hopefully by the end of this year. Obviously, there's slippages with timeframes and permits and all the rest. However, for us, it's really culminating in that bankable feasibility study. So if you look at our next 6 months of workflow, we've got TEM activity of our own starting, CSAMT on our project. That will then be followed very quickly by a drilling program, which we've outlined with our in-country technical team and also our advisors here. Simultaneously, we'll be operating and looking to operate the pilot plant that we're acquiring. So that plant has 100-ton nameplate capacity. We have technical advisors who are going to go through that plant and look at our block flow model for the brine, flesh that out. This is the conceptual area. Look at the gap analysis of what's in the plant. There might be something needed in the circuit and might need some refurbishing. Of which point, when we're actually doing our pumping well up at site, we're going to look at transporting that brine from site to our pilot plant in the city of Salta. And then essentially going through the process of producing lithium carbonate. And it's all about getting that first box, that first kilo, 10 kilos, 100 kilos of product where you can go, okay, this is a proof of concept model now where you're not an explorer, you're a junior producer. And for us, that even goes further where into next year, while the plant is located in the city of Salta, it's fully permitted, fully operational. It has actually produced battery-grade lithium carbonate from other salars, brine from other salars, when it was previously utilized. For us, we'll look at ultimately moving that plant up to site. Once you're doing that, you're building your evaporation ponds, which we'd probably look at start doing earlier than we actually move the plant. You're then really having that proof of concept shown with a plant operational at your project. And it becomes a point of, okay, we're producing at 100 tons. Do we start then producing a 1,000-ton plant? Do we build a 20,000-ton plant? Do we build a 2,000-ton plant? And a lot of those scenarios have already been mapped out for us. You look at Orocobre, they went to a 20,000-ton scenario, which is now Alchem. Trilogy Minerals has gone the 2,000-ton route, and they plan to expand to 10,000 tons. So for us, that's the pathway that we're taking. We're looking, and we're doing this fairly quickly, and we're very fortunate that we have a great team, myself and the country manager, my 2IC, Alex, Alex has worked on some great projects in the lithium space, and with those in-country connections, we're able to move fairly quickly. The pilot plant, for example, it's fully permitted, it's in place, it's operational. That's a great step for us to be able to go to that proof of concept stage rather than spending several $1 million building one, getting the permitting in place. And permitting for plants can take significant periods of time in Argentina. So for us, we're able to fast track that through an already existing piece of infrastructure. So if you look at the two work streams, you've got your production piece and your exploration piece. The reality of it is if you're getting a JORC measured resource, that's also then an ability to go to your proven, your probable reserves. And then if you add a 20,000 ton scenario on top of your pilot work at a cost accuracy of plus minus 5-10%, what that culminates in is a bankable feasibility study. So for us, that's where we're moving towards, and that's the goal that we're looking to hit. And we're quite advanced for where we are. Unfortunately, that was part of the project genesis. Like if you look at how we put the project together, we're able to move fairly quickly because there is significant level of historical exploration. There is significant level of historical chemical engineering work, which when you pull it all together, we're not out in the bush looking for lithium. We know it's there. We're not looking for answers to the chemical engineering. We know it's there, and we've worked on other projects where there's been challenges and we've been able to overcome those challenges. So,
it's incredibly important because you're hearing the demand is here. It's really about who's going to be fast to market and really start exercising on getting the supply into the market, and the fact that you've got a deposit that there is lithium, and then you've also got the ability to build up a plant that will then be able to do the next stage. You really have a project or a whole company that suddenly it's quite attractive, and you're really quite fast to market, which, as we said, there's companies now, and lithium, I spoke with Joe Lowry, said that so many lithium projects are always so late, and there's always so many deadlines, and at least where you guys are positioned, you're already a few obstacles, a few steps ahead of where people that might have been seeing this boom coming 2 years ago have gone, we need a rush. But reality check for them is it still could be 10, 15, 20 years down the line before they even get to any sort of stage. So you mentioned before about the team and the experience. Can you shed a bit of light on who else is involved in the team, and I guess what's given them such a drive and direction to really accomplish and take on this challenge?
Absolutely. I mean, we are a small team. It's just myself and Alex, our country manager. So Alex worked at Rincon Lithium as well when he was there at Energy. He also worked on the project in Pastos Grandes as well. We do have other relationships. For example, our lawyer Marcos. We've worked with Marcos for about 8 years. He's worked on various projects. So our outside technical advisors, we have long-standing relationships with. So directly, there's two of us on the team, and obviously the pursuit board.
Yes.
Pete Wall's a fantastic chair to have, and Tom Eady and I have worked together for many years on various projects, and he's obviously on the board. So we have a great board structure of Tom, who's essentially a geologist. He is probably one of the best exploration geologists you can find. Most people know him from Salar, which went from 15 mil to $1 billion market cap, where he was founding chairman. I like to talk about his experience at Pasminco, where he was a geologist, and his geological prowess. He's exceptionally talented, and we're very fortunate to have that. Just as Pete Wall as chair, from a legal background, it's been a very valuable lesson in having Pete, having his guidance as well. I've learned quite a lot in this pursuit deal with Pete, and just understanding things of that nature from the capital markets, corporate legal background as well. So we have a great board. Alex and myself obviously bring that in-country technical knowledge, project knowledge, having put projects through into production, understanding, what are the traps you're going to face down the road. And then we've surrounded ourselves with a core group of advisors in country who we're very familiar with. We know these relationships, and indirectly, there's about 30 guys on the ground there that are working for us through various consultancy firms and various technical firms. That these are long-standing relationships going back many years, and guys that for example, Bob Affleck, the current MD, and I went out to Argentina, and I was talking to one of the geological consultants who'd worked on a project with me back in 2015, and just talking about the memories of that project. So for us, having that team, that's important, that these are long-standing relationships and top quality talent, not just at board level, but in-ground level, in-country level as well. So for us, we've got a team we've assembled we know we can execute the project with, as these guys have all done it before. Yeah. And that's a key thing for us.
Well, it's funny. I hear that, you say it in Perth, it's such a small world, but it almost seems that even in mining and the roles that you've got, you just build up these partnerships and and really relationships with people that then progress, years and years down the line, and you build these teams. You find out who you want to work with, that you can get a proven track record. I mean, when we've got this project happening, you've clearly got a lot of work ahead of you, and you've just done the raise, and I'm very happy that you've flown to Perth, not just to speak with me. You've been doing other things, but I mean, when you're looking at Argentina as well, and we mentioned briefly about some of the other really exciting projects. I mean, there's some other really big tier companies in the area. The one thing that I've always sort of been fascinated by is what the collaboration scene is like in regards to, if it's sharing equipment or sharing stuff, or maybe the complete opposite. No one really wants to work together, but I just have a feeling, being on the outside, and you see all these companies posting their maps, and they're all sort of on top of each other in a polite sense. I mean, what is the process of potentially working alongside these, or the opposite of sort of avoiding them?
Yeah, I think everyone tends to avoid it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's a high competition environment in Argentina. Not having said that, everyone uses the same drill contractors.
Yeah.
Everyone uses the same, geotechnical guys. I think Quantec, who we're using for our TEM, they've worked on every project that I know of, and they've worked on several of mine. So, you do tend to repeat those technical guys because they're quite limited.
Small scale to pick from.
Yeah. So, but having said that, everyone operates within the sandbox. It's very difficult to get real estate in the sandbox these days. Prime real estate on a Salar is very difficult to come by. You're dealing now with more established companies. It's not so many juniors that are there. You're seeing a lot of, for example, Eramet, which is a French listed company. They're quite significant in their size. They're on the Centenario Salar. You've got obviously the Alchem, Livent guys. These are big multi-billion cap companies. So they obviously run, their own race, but they still operate with good corporate governance and good project management, skill sets. You often see a lot of guys jump between the projects, so you might see a guy who was at Galaxy back in the day, who's now at Eramet, who's now at wherever, and it's the same technical talent that you see. And there's a lot of SQM guys that have popped up in Argentina as well, bringing on that Chilean expertise. So, playing in the sandbox is quite important, and that's why the Argentinian government has Be a Good Neighbor on their their media pamphlets and things like that. It's lithium brine also is an interesting resource. It's a dynamic resource. So lithium brine doesn't know that there's a tenement boundary on top of the Salar where you're naturally to play, and it flows across boundaries. So for us, it's if you think Perth's small, Salta in Argentina is even smaller. And everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows what's going on, and it's a fairly respectful and sometimes collaborative environment. But most people just run their own race. But what is apparent and what is always consistent and there is that everybody's respectful to everybody else, which is a key part of operating in the space. Yeah,
because that's the idea that fascinates me. You just said it, is that the resources underneath, they don't care about what's underneath. They're just sprawled out everywhere. And then it's about, what acreage or what areas you've got mapped off. And then, of course, I can imagine that presents the challenging discussions whereby you have to go to negotiation. It happens all the time that, people want to acquire extra land, and it's the talks being like, well, our resource continues on, and it's figuring out, who gets what. And I mean, from your perspective there, I mean, how far or what else do you see the project that you've got expanding potentially, or again, naturally you've got a decent sized JORC resource potentially, that's just primarily going to be the focus? Or again, being in that optimistic, you've got to have so many different ideas and potential future outlooks. What's running through your mind in that regard?
Oh, look, I think you have to look at the whole, the macro scenario as a whole, and also the commodity specific scenario of where the market is going. Where's lithium going?
Yeah.
I obviously mentioned I started my career in 2008. Here we are, 2023, and it's been a massive jump in terms of sector growth, consolidation, M&A activity. We had the Livent Alchem merger, which I would say that not many people saw coming. But having said that, you've also had Rio Tinto enter the space. How Rio Tinto allowed Alchem to be acquired at next to no premium in what is a merger, and what will ultimately become Paul Graves' company when that consummates. It's going to go to the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to delist from Australia. That is quite amazing, and almost a bit of a changing of the guard per se. You're seeing a lot of majors now that will have to come downstream into the space. And not just mining companies, but also car manufacturers.
Exactly.
Tesla's building their own lithium refinery in the States. So from that perspective, if you look at Argentina, there's only 11 salars. It's not like God is making any more of them.
They're not just going to miraculously appear one day like a spawn. Yeah.
So for us to have a deal like Pursuit, it's very rare that will be here in the next 2 years. In fact, I don't see any deals like this occurring because all of the ground will have been pegged.
Yeah.
I think that there's only a finite number of salars. So for us, looking in a Pursuit, we do have some neighbours. We've had a few discussions and a few friendly chats of where they are, what their intention is, what our intention is. I think where we are, we're very lucky that there is a major player in an Argentinian company that controls a lot of ground acreage. And Tom Eady and I, we have bets. Tom is of the view that if we can get our production going to a certain level, a car manufacturer or a major miner might say, well, those guys have got the production, those guys have got the real estate, let's buy
Bundle
it and merge it together. For us as Pursuit, I personally see that there's an opportunity to be a pure play consolidated salar, which is actually rare. You look at the salars, Lithium Americas basically has Pastos Grandes consolidated. Hombre Muerto is now majorly occupied by the Livent Alchem consolidated company. Is Galana takeover target? Well, yeah, naturally. It's only the third company then on the Salar, and then after that you have POSCO that could be a sale. At the end of the day, these salars will be consolidated. Arizaro is the biggest salar, and that's got a bit of time to go, but even that's starting to reduce in the number of people that are active on that salar. So for us, I think Pursuit has a real blue sky opportunity as the market progresses. And, we had 10 million electric cars sold last year. That's a big number. And even in Australia, you're starting to see Teslas more commonly on the road. It used to be that most electric cars were in China and Hong Kong. Like you go to Hong Kong in 2016, 2017, every second car was a Tesla. Whereas now in even Australia and even in Melbourne, where I am, I'm always seeing a Tesla on the road, always seeing a Tesla. And then you've got, the electrification strategy of governments banning combustion engines. You had the UK and the Netherlands talking very early dates, 2030, 2020, I think 2025 was even mentioned at one point. And, with that electrification push, you also look at the auto market. The electric vehicles through COVID, the purchases stayed constant. You had a lot of marginal buyers leave the space. People ahhing about getting a car, but it was the people that go, I want that car, that stayed really constant with auto sales. So what this all translates to for Pursuit is, there's a real opportunity, not just in the near term of what we're doing. We're running our own race, and we're working towards that, production scenario with our pilot plant, the proof of concept. Having that plant up at site, which is a small scale producing operation. We've seen the floor of the market, I believe, in the lithium space, that 20,000 per ton floor. A lot of the lepidite coming out of the space, and then that's really set that price floor where a lot of people were guessing that. You didn't have to be a genius to figure out $80,000 a ton was not sustainable and it was going to drop. But I think there's been a bit of a call there where brine operations, when you've got an OPEX of, sort of 3,500 per ton to produce lithium carbonate on average, they're much more favorable in terms of the numbers. And I think if you look at what the Chinese are really doing, who are, they're the biggest, processors of hard rock material, Ganfeng and Tianqi are highly active in Argentina. Tianqi is on the Centenario Salar, and there's always the rumors, are they going to buy out Eramet? Ganfeng has the Mariana project. They have positions in Pozuelos. They have positions in a lot of salars. So I think looking at that Chinese lead, all again coming back to Pursuit, I think we're very uniquely placed in that finding a deal like this in 2 years, I personally
very
believe
difficult,
will be nigh on impossible.
Yeah.
You look at Chile, will they have fully nationalized their industry? Who knows? They quite possibly could have. You're looking at Coldeco announcing their active role in their discussions up in the Atacama. Bolivia will never produce lithium, in my personal view. I'm sure there's experts and analysts that say otherwise. They've been at that for many years, and there's the infamous photo of Morales, holding up a jar of lithium carbonate, and there's all the rumors that it was just caster sugar from the local 7-Eleven. So, from that perspective, it's one of those things that Argentina, I think, will be at the forefront of the lithium brine projects. It really bodes well for Pursuit to be in that space. We're in a space that is being consolidated, and I think the majors will need to move in. BHP says they're not interested in lithium. I don't believe that.
No.
Then if they're not so interested in lithium, why do they have representative offices in Salta in Argentina? What are you looking for down there? I think that also with Rio Tinto being left foot, right foot tends to follow. And I think, the Anglo Americans, the Glencores, BHP, even South 32, these major companies will start looking into lithium as it is a critical metal. It is sought after by investor demand, and investors, they are the ones that will dictate your direction. Investors and shareholders are the people we are responsible to, and as company officers, officials, board members, you've got to be listening to what your investors want. And at this point for Pursuit, we're very much in the right spot for company growth just on our own, a potential takeover target, a consolidation of other targets in the future, and all these opportunities for us are on the table. And a lot of that is because of the foundation work we put in play. We're also at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And we've got as a team, we can navigate all of these challenges. We have a great board. We have great in-country technical teams that have done this previously. So in terms of the market, I think it's an exciting space, and the market will really dictate where we're going. It's going again to mentioning Joe Lowry. I mean, go and have a look at the Roskill report. The Roskill report's been coming out for years, and every year they have the projected lithium projects coming online. It's a huge pipeline. I think maybe 2 have actually come online.
Never come.
They've predicted. So, lithium projects are hard. They're not easy. They're not a walk in the park. It's really chemical engineering masquerading as mining, especially in the brine operations. Even in the converter capacity of hard rock, it's still a lot of chemical engineering work that comes to this commodity. It's not just lithium, it's lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide, lithium chloride. You've got a lot of subsets of the lithium product. It's all end user customer specific. So it's not like iron ore where you can just go and, there's 62% DSO hematite, let's turn it on, which is what Vale did with the S11D project and flooded the market. Lithium takes
a lot more time. Yeah,
it's 5 to 7 years to bring a project online, and even then you're going to have hurdles. Orocobre, when they started their project, I think they had 77% lithium content. If you go back through the announcements, it's not a simple commodity, and I think, however, the demand is going to significantly outstrip the supply, and I think that the market is not really factoring that in terms of the supply response. I think there's still a bit of education that's needed in terms of, lithium oxide, for example. You've had a lot of great Australian companies like PLS, Pilbara have come on. They've filled that excess converter capacity in China. So, where does that now leave people? Well, it leaves them looking at building converters, which, even the Chinese are not looking at wanting to do. You're looking at brine projects, you're looking at other sources. And I think that the demand is heavily, outstripping supply, especially as, electric vehicles. They're going to sell 12, 13, 14 million in the next year.
It's only going to increase. Yeah.
It's only going up. And then you've got the applications of the Tesla wall packs. I actually happen to know a guy who has the largest installation of Tesla wall packs in the Southern Hemisphere. He's got like 25 of the things in his garage, and he's selling electricity back into the grid. He's a pioneer in that space, but that will become more and more mainstream.
Yeah.
You talk about Tesla, but there's another company called Sonnen, which also has Tesla wall packs out of Europe. So, the market for Pursuit is very bright. We're in the right space at the right time. I think we're going to see a lot of majors now move into that M&A space. They kind of stood back, in terms of the first wave. But if you look at these assets, now is actually really the time, the next 12, 18 months, because at the end of the day, these assets will command a significant premium in the next 2-3 years, and the majors know that. At which point M&A activity, I think, is going to be on the horizon. I think consolidation is going to be there. And I think you're going to see sort of a battle between, major miners like Rio Tinto, BHP. You're going to see a battle between the established players like Albemarle, SQM. Where are they going to move? What are the Chinese going to do? You've POSCO, who are still quite active in the space in terms of not only sourcing and securing offtake, but their own project, Sal de Vida in the north there. And then you've also got the US and Europe car manufacturers.
Or GM earlier in the year.
GM earlier in the year. There's always the takeover talk by Tesla of Sigma Lithium. That's a natural fit with the North American access. But having said that, there's other players that can move into this space. Even Wesfarmers has lithium exposure. So, from that perspective, it's a very interesting time for where Pursuit could potentially go. But as I said, we'll continue to run our own race and really just factor in that goal, which is meeting demand response. Making sure that we can hit supply coming into the market, and then looking at what's the best option for our shareholders to really create and capture value.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive. I think from that you've outlined so many potential pathways, and really it comes down to the idea that, as you said, it's just doing what you need to do day by day and achieving the timeline that you've set out. But yeah, I think it goes without saying that the businesses have been hard done by over the past couple of years, and there's undoubtedly private equity and big groups and big companies that have got their checkbooks ready to pounce and acquire assets. And hearing that Argentina have got these Salares just waiting and sitting there, and as you said, they're not just going to suddenly reappear. The accumulation and slow accumulation of those projects to have huge one-tier project going is a very realistic reality given the demand. And yeah, when you look at big banks, Morgan Stanley originally was very bearish on lithium, and they've instantly changed their tone recently. And they're putting out those reports, but in behind the scenes, 100% they're buying, or they're doing things to capitalize it, because everyone knows there's no real substitute at the moment. There's not really going to be a massive threat. The lithium demand is not going anywhere, and as you said, it's the ability to find the projects and optimize them and get them ready. There's a whole lot of time required for that. So from the sounds of it, Pursuit's in a pretty, as you said, fortunate or convenient spot. I think there's a lot of I guess easy way to put it that way, but I think it is generally a very attractive spot from the sounds of it, and clearly you're very educated, you know a lot about it. And I mean, we've ticked over a long conversation here, but for listeners that want to learn more naturally about yourself and contact you, but more importantly follow Pursuit and what's going on with the project in Argentina, where can they go and get that information?
Yeah, I mean, look at us on our social media channels, follow us on, have a look at our website. We're quite active on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We do have an active social media presence. Obviously, get in contact with the company. I'm always available to shareholders, and we're always wanting to take our shareholders and investors on the journey and be accessible. So yeah, feel free to look at our social media, contact the website, or even just get in contact with myself. My email's on a lot of our announcements, and we're looking at what conferences we'll be at as well. So if you are at a conference, I was in Sydney with IR Resolve and Jane Morgan doing their Market Insights lunch. Come up, say hello, have a chat. We're always open to receiving shareholders and talking about anything that's on their minds, be it the lithium market, the project specifically, where it's all going, and the activity in the sector in the space.
Yeah, no, as I said, it's been an incredibly comprehensive chat, and I appreciate you showing it, because I haven't spoken with anyone that's been exploring Argentina, and you've given a lot of insight into that particular area in the project. So I'm looking forward to having you back in Perth. You'll probably be coming back and forth, more likely going to Argentina before me. But when you next come, it'd be great to, again, follow up it and see what's progressing. So thank you for taking the time to speak on the show, Aaron.
No, thanks for having me. It's been really amazing.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow the Market Bull on our socials at Twitter and LinkedIn by searching The Market Bull. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website by visiting www.themarketbull.com.au.